Okay, let's talk a little bit about producing a handout for your presentation. The first thing you need to keep in mind is that the handout for presentation is courtesy. It's doing something nice for maybe somebody that's going to miss your presentation, not able to be there. And then, of course, for the details for the people that are there. Obviously, they can't remember everything you said, so the handout just helps them. Keeping that in mind, you have to understand that there is no set guidelines for how to produce a handout for a presentation. There's no rules about it. It's not a professional, rigorous thing. So we're just trying to be courteous and as nice as possible. Okay, so I'm going to use the title of my talk, the one that I kept repeating during my talk, and in case you don't know, this handout is actually based on the talk that I gave. The talk is on the course already, if you haven't seen it, and so it was called Quality Relationships, my name, where I did the presentation, I would write that in, and then the date. And then I've used this number format to let the audience know what my major points are and then my subpoints. So obviously my major points, I can just scan the handout and I can tell I have 3 major points. And then I have these subpoints under each point, under each major point. I don't have my introduction in here in my handout, and that's because my introduction was basically my name, and I have that here. And I tried to grab their attention in the introduction. And then I listed off my major points in my introduction, and you can see the major points here, so I don't need to repeat them in an introduction on my handout. The only time I would add anything as far as an introduction goes onto my handout is if I said something that needed a reference or a citation in my introduction. So, had I introduced this talk with some sort of a stat, like 40% of marriages end in divorce or something like that, well, then I would put that in my introduction. I'd just write intro, and then I would cite that. I would write that quote out or a statistic out, and I would cite it. But in my talk, I didn't have any, so I can jump straight into my first major point. Identify what a quality relationship means for each partner, and then I talked about in terms of time. One partner wants lots of time, and you can just read. This is pretty much, if somebody missed my presentation, they could read this handout and they would have almost everything I said. I don't have to use complete sentences. I'm just relaying concepts to them so that they have as many examples as I can give them without word for word giving them my speech. So they can read through these examples, and then point number 2 was hammering out the daily nuts and bolts. And then I go on to explain. And this is where I had one example right here. Humans tend to take the path of least resistance. And the example I told them about was this mouse refusing food but receiving pleasure stimuli to the brain until it died. And so then I have this little citation, this little footnote. And again, there's no rules about this, but I'm just trying to be courteous as to where I got this idea from, because it wasn't my own. And so down below, I have the citation. And on the Moodle course, I explain sort of the things that you would put into a citation, either a text citation or a website citation. And so this is the example here of my text citation from a website, actually. Okay, so I continue on with my major points, and I get to my last point, and I give them the information from my third major topic. And again, I don't have a closing. I don't need to go over who I am, and I don't need to leave them with the challenge on the paper. You could, if you want, down here you could write in challenge and then give them the challenge. But again, I just decided not to do that. It's fine if you don't. If I had I shouldn't have anything else in the closing. I shouldn't be giving any more information, no more statistics and stuff. The only other thing that might come into a closing would be a quote, like for inspirational purposes. And so you would add that quote and again try to cite that quote and where it is. So that's it for the handout. Let's take a second and look at exactly what I've put into these citations. And we'll do that straight on the Moodle course, because that's where I give those details out. Okay, so for books or any kind of written materials, we're not going to get too specific. What you need is the last name and the first name of the person that was the author, the title of the book or the title of the article, if it was the city where it was published, the name of the publisher, the year of publication, and the medium of publication. And so The medium of publication for you is pretty much just going to be the word print, and it includes books, periodicals, magazines. Okay, so for an online citation, use the following format. So hopefully it's reliable. You're not using Wikipedia or something like that. You're going to have an article name if possible, title of the website, the author of the person that wrote the article, any versions of the article or numbers or revisions of the article, any dates that are included with that article, or volumes or issues. You can add all that if you can. If there is a publisher, you can name that. Page numbers usually refer to like a page from the article. So a lot of times the website is just a copy of a print material or something they've written somewhere else. The medium for you is going to be web. It's right here, WEB. And then the date that you access the material and the URL of that article. Again, you're not going to get all those things most times, but just get as many of those as you can, and that would be courteous for those that are reading your handout.